Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I welcome you to the series History, Science and Faith in Islam. It is a series designed to foster a renewal of faith based on knowledge. This session is on the Battle of Lepanto, a critical event in world history. In the last third of the 16th century, three critical events had a decisive impact on the course of Islamic history. One was the Battle of Lepanto, fought in 1571 off the coast of Greece, in which the combined navies of the Vatican, Venice, and Spain managed to stop the Ottoman navy, slowing the Ottoman advance to the west and denying them access to the Atlantic Ocean and the Americas. The second was the Battle of Al-Khasr al-Kabir in 1578, in which the Moroccan army crushed Portuguese invaders in North Africa, shattering Christian ambitions to conquer and colonize the Maghreb. The third was the Moroccan invasion of the Songhai Empire in 1592, which destroyed Timbuktu and other major trade centers along the Niger River, contributed to the political disintegration of West Africa, and facilitated increased slave trade to America. The key to understanding these events lies once again in the social and political disintegration of Muslim Africa after the dissolution of the Al-Muhaddis Empire. Muslim Spain was not the only object of Christian Iberian crusades. Sensing a political vacuum in the Maghreb and taking advantage of the mutual warfare amongst the local emirs of Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, both Portugal and Castile moved to occupy important strategic posts along the coast of Africa. In this effort, they were helped by the naval power of Venice and Genoa. Not that the Christians were contemplating a conquest of the Maghreb at this time. As yet, they did not possess the superiority in organization and arms necessary for an outright conquest. Moreover, there were internal rivalries among the Christians themselves, in particular between Portugal and Castile, precluding a sustained onslaught on North Africa. In 1355, Tripoli was attacked and briefly occupied by Genoa. In 1390, a combined French and Genoese force invaded the ancient city of Mahdia. In 1399, Castile occupied Tetuan in Morocco. In 1415, the strategic harbor of Ceuta on the Straits of Gibraltar fell to the Portuguese, who continued their advance along the Atlantic coast, occupying the strategic port of Al-Khasr al-Kabir in 1458. By 1470, Tangiers was under Portuguese control. Trade routes between North Africa and southern Europe were now firmly in Christian hands. The union of Castile and Aragon under Ferdinand and Isabella and the conquest of Granada in 1492 removed the last hurdle in the way of Spanish expansion. Flushed from their victory and expulsion of the Jews in 1492 and of the Muslims in 1502, the Spaniards expanded their possessions in the Mediterranean. The discovery of America in 1492 and the subsequent loot from the Aztec, Mayan, and Inca empires made Spain a world power. The popes acted as power brokers in medieval Europe, and they brought about a reconciliation between Spain and Portugal. In 1494, Pope Alexander VI drew an arbitrary line around the globe, dividing up the world between Spain and Portugal, for each to conquer and bring under the fold of Christianity. The military machine of the Iberian Christians had been perfected during the protracted struggle with the Muslims. Now it was let loose on the rest of the world. There followed a general thrust of the Western Crusades aimed at the total conquest of the Maghrib. In 1505, Mars al-Kabir in Algeria fell to the Spanish. Oran in Algeria fell in 1509. Bougie in Tunisia was captured in 1510. Tripoli in Libya was destroyed in 1511. Tlemcen became a Spanish protectorate in 1512. Meanwhile, the Portuguese moved along the western coast of Morocco. Agadir was occupied in 1505. Converted into a strong fortress named Santa Cruz, it became a powerful base for further expansion to the south. In 1507, Safi was occupied. In 1513, Azamor fell. In 1515, the Portuguese controlled the entire coastline of West Africa from Morocco to the Horn of Africa. The bases along this coast served as an anchor point for their further expansion around the coast of Africa and into the Indian Ocean. They also served as shipping centers for the Atlantic slave trade, which now began to gather momentum. The global tide of Portuguese and Spanish expansion took place precisely at a time when the Islamic world was in convulsion. This was the period during which the great dynasties of the Safavids and the Mughals were founded, and the Ottomans were consolidating their power. The Battle of Chaldiran between the Safavids and the Ottomans was fought in 1514, and 1517 was the year when the Ottomans captured Egypt from the Mamluks. It was not until 1526 that the Ottomans, the Safavids, and the Mughals finally settled down and started the process of global resistance to Portuguese and Spanish aggression. By 1530, the Spaniards had conquered most of the trading posts in the Mediterranean coast of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. Tripoli in Libya and Malta fell to the Spaniards, who handed them over to the Knights of St. John to garrison and hold. The Spanish were not alone in their thrust into Muslim territories. Venice, Genoa, and Vatican were equally active. At stake were not only the trade routes of the Mediterranean, but also the very soul of North Africa. In 1532, the Genoese captured Coron in the Adriatic. Suleiman the Magnificent, the Ottoman Sultan, could not disregard this challenge. As the Khalifa, he was duty-bound to protect Muslims no matter where they lived. Suleiman ordered Ibrahim Pasha, Grand Vizier of the Khilafat, to upgrade the Ottoman fleet. Ibrahim was in Egypt, reorganizing the administration of that province. He was a man of extraordinary abilities whose legacy sustained the Ottoman administrative machinery until the 19th century. The Ottoman Navy was already a force to be reckoned with, thanks to the initiatives taken by Sultan Selim I. Ibrahim Pasha proceeded to build on that foundation. Timber for shipbuilding was plentiful in Lebanon. There were first-rate harbors in Turkey, Egypt, and Syria. What was needed was leadership and trained manpower for the sea. This he found on the coast of North Africa. As the Christian powers of Spain, Venice, and Genoa monopolized the Mediterranean trade between 1500 and 1530, the North Africans increasingly turned to piracy. Rich bounty was available from Genoese ships in the Mediterranean, as well as Spanish ships in the Atlantic carrying the loot from the Americas to Spain. The North Africans, as well as the English, attacked these ships for their booty. The skills and the arts of the seas were perfected in this process. Ibrahim Pasha convinced Suleiman the Magnificent to invite these captains of the sea to Istanbul and press them into the service of the Khilafat. One of these captains was Khairuddin of Algiers, who was amongst the ablest admirals of the age. Khairuddin was made the admiral of the empire. Within a span of 5 years, he changed the balance of power in the eastern Mediterranean. In 1534, he captured Tunis from the Spanish. There began an historic struggle between Spain and the Ottomans for control of North Africa. The question was whether the Maghrib would remain Muslim or be ceded as Spain had been to the Christians. The sheikhs in Tunisia and the emirs of the old Hafsid dynasty resisted Ottoman rule because it meant a loss of the privileged position. They preferred the Christian Spaniards to the Muslim Turks. With the connivance of the sheikhs and the emirs, the Spanish took Tunis in 1535, reinstalling the old Hafsid ruler Hassan. In retaliation, Khairuddin raided the coast of Valencia in 1536 in Spain. In 1537, he captured the Venetian island of Corfu and Otranto in southern Italy, where he established an Ottoman base. Morea and the islands in the Adriatic Sea followed. With the Turks at the doorsteps of Rome, panic set in. Pope Paul III organized a combined armada of the principal Christian sea powers to resist the Ottomans. In 1538, at the Battle of Preveza, the Turks destroyed this armada consisting of the navies of Venice and the Vatican. The issue was settled for the time being. For 32 years thereafter, from 1538 to 1570, Ottoman power in the Eastern Mediterranean was supreme. The focus now shifted to the Western Mediterranean. Charles V, Emperor of Spain, struck at Algeria in 1541, wreaking havoc on the coastal cities. In turn, Khairuddin took Otranto in Italy in 1541, forcing Venice to sue for peace. Khairuddin died in 1546, leaving behind a large cadre of trained admirals, including the celebrated Piri Reis. Piri Reis was a consummate seaman who combined in his person outstanding organizational abilities with a superb understanding of sea power. A map of the Atlantic produced by Piri Reis in 1561 shows the coasts of West Africa, Europe, and Brazil in such detail and such accuracy that it would meet the requirements of modern-day cartography. Tripoli in Libya and the island of Malta were keys to the trade routes in the Mediterranean. Since 1530, Spain had occupied Malta and had delegated the task of defending it to the Knights of St. John. These knights acted as pirates, wreaking havoc on Muslim ships and pilgrims on the way to Hajj. In 1551, one of Piri Reis's admirals, Torgud Reis, reclaimed Tripoli, throwing out the Knights of St. John. In Spain, meanwhile, Philip II had succeeded Charles V. The Spaniards mustered a powerful fleet and moved against the Ottomans. Admiral Piali Pasha routed and destroyed this fleet at Djerba in 1561. Piri Reis followed up with a siege of Malta in 1565, but the effort was not successful. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent passed away the following year, 1565. He had made Ottoman power the dominant land power in Europe, and almost realized his goal to make Ottoman Navy the dominant navy in the world. The struggle between the Ottoman Khilafat and the Christian powers of Spain and Portugal had now become global. Moroccan, French, and English ships routinely intercepted Spanish ships carrying the loot from the Mayan, Aztec, and Inca civilizations of America. In the Mediterranean, the Ottomans faced the combined naval powers of Spain, Italy, and the Vatican. In the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, the Ottoman Navy took on the Portuguese. Battles were fought as far west as Algeria and as far east as Dio in India. After Suleiman, Salim II continued to challenge the naval power of Spain, Portugal, and Venice. In 1571, Cyprus was captured from Venice. The Ottomans proceeded to lay siege to the island of Malta, but the defending garrison withstood the assault. The successful resistance encouraged the European powers. Urged by Pope Pius V, the combined navies of Spain, Venice, and the Vatican joined battle. On October 7, 1571, the Christian navies squared off against the powerful Ottoman navy at Lepanto off the coast of Greece. Losses were heavy on both sides, but the Christian navies had the upper hand. The remnant of the Ottoman navy was forced to withdraw to Istanbul. The Battle of Lepanto was a benchmark in world affairs. It broke the naval initiative of the Ottomans. Combined with the unfolding events in Morocco, where the Saadids successfully spurned the Ottoman advances, it confined Turkish naval power to the eastern Mediterranean. The Ottomans would no longer be a credible threat in the western Mediterranean or the Atlantic. In time, the Dutch and the British would displace the Iberian powers. Before the Battle of Lepanto, the odds were even for a Muslim penetration of the Atlantic. After Lepanto, these odds disappeared. The road to America was controlled by Spain and Portugal. American history would henceforth be determined by the interaction of Europe with the New World. The Ottomans did make a supreme effort to rebuild their navy. Within a year, the Turkish navy was back in action. In 1572, the Turkish admiral Uluç Pasha held off a combined assault by the European navies. Meanwhile, taking advantage of a respite from Turkish pressure, Spain occupied Tunis in 1571, but the Ottomans retook it for good the following year. Thereafter, Tunis was to remain in the Muslim camp until the colonial period of the 19th century. In 1573, Venice sued for peace and agreed to cede Cyprus and make a large payment as war indemnities. By 1585, the entire coast of North Africa, from Tunisia to western Algeria, was firmly in Turkish hands. Thus ended the Spanish attempt in the 16th century to conquer and colonize North Africa. It had started as a spillover of the conquest of Granada under Isabella and Ferdinand. It ended in failure because the Ottoman navy proved to be just strong enough to frustrate their designs. However, the Battle of Lepanto ensured that Ottoman naval power would be contained within the eastern Mediterranean. The Atlantic Ocean and America would belong to the West Europeans. This concludes our session on the Battle of Lepanto. In the next session, inshallah, we'll cover the Second Siege of Vienna by Turkish armies in 1683-1684. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.